It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce David Gur. We're here in your beautiful apartment in Ramat Gan. And David, it is such an honor and a privilege to be in your home and to meet you, a real icon and a hero, an incredible hero of the Jewish people of Am Yisrael. And David has compiled this most incredible book called Brothers for Resistance and Rescue, the Underground Zionist Youth Movement in Hungary during World War II. And it's published by Geffen Books. So this, I highly recommend everybody to get a copy, and it should be in every home, in every Jewish library as well, in every library all over the world. So I'm just going to read a little bit of an introduction. We have your different people in the books who were involved in the resistance. So David,
400 people.
400 people. You were born in Okanai, in Hungary in 1926, and your Hungarian name was Andrei
Gross.
So David was a member of Shomer HaTzair from 1943. With the German invasion on the 19th of the 3rd in 1944, you joined the Underground, and you joined a team that prepared forged documents for the members of the Zionist youth groups. Over time, you were in charge of forgery activities of documents and seals. The forgery workshop of the Zionist Underground supplied forged documents also to non-Jewish residents as well. The operation was the largest in terms of size and variety in the whole of occupied Europe. In December 1944, David was caught in the forgery workshop with the whole staff and all the equipment. You were taken to the district headquarters of the Arrow Cross and brutally interrogated. One member of the staff, Mickey Langer, maybe you can mention a bit later, was murdered on the very first night of the interrogation. David was transferred to the Central Military Prison on Margit Boulevard and interrogated by the members of the political department. Now, that was the same prison that Hannah Shenesh was also, that's where she was killed.
Yeah.
You were released at the end of December together with a group of his comrades in a daring operation of the Zionist Youth Movement Underground. And owing to the release of over 100 other prisoners from the same prison, you were freed. A total of 117 detainees were liberated. This was an extraordinary achievement. And this isn't so well known. This is an amazing operation that you were actually...
You are here and you will publish all around the world.
It's unbelievable, because that they managed in occupied Europe, in occupied Hungary, that they saved you in a daring mission. It's amazing. After the war, from 1945 to 1949, David held several positions in the movement in the Haganah headquarters. He was a commander for the last Bria from Hungary, Bricha, that is making Aliyah.
Yeah.
And David made Aliyah in 1949 and joined Kibbutz Ga'aton, and you learned civil engineering at the Technion in Haifa, and you had an office for engineering projects. David now lives in this beautiful home in Ramat Gan. He's married to Naomi. They have 3 daughters and 10 grandchildren and many great-grandchildren, and he's got many more. And David is one of the initiators and founders of the Society for the Research of History of the Zionist Youth Movements in Hungary. Since 1984, the Society has been active in commemorating the underground operations of the Zionist Youth Movements. In 1944, in disseminating information in Israel and the world about their activities. And David, I just want to mention that I've learned Jewish history from a very young age, and what you and your comrades, your fellow Jews did in Budapest is absolutely unbelievable and remarkable, and it should be known to everybody. And unfortunately, it's not so well known. You saved, and you're going to go into it. You forged documents. They say over 1,000 different documents, 100,000 documents that saved thousands of lives. It's just amazing. So many people survived because of your activities that you did with your friends in the Zionist Youth Movement.
Not I, but other people that were involved in the life-saving activities. We think that we minimum 30,000 people rescued.
And I think in itself is unbelievable. I think it's the highest amount. I think it's the highest amount, 30,000.
Yes.
Not only that, you helped with bringing people to Mandate Palestine at the time. You helped smuggle them to Romania, and then they could come to Eretz Israel. And I think one of the most amazing things that you'll go into is that you were all united. The youth movements were united.
It is a short
So David, if I could just ask before we start, because it is absolutely unbelievable, can you just mention a little bit about your family, about your parents?
The activities of the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement in 1944 in Hungary. Essence: dispatching 200 emissaries to 300 various communities and forced labor camps to warn and rescue, smuggling 15,000 young people into Romania on their way to the land of Israel, saving from Auschwitz and certain death, setting up and running 55 children homes and saving 6,000 children and caretakers, providing Swiss protection letters, Schutzpasses, for tens of thousands of Jews, approximately 100,000 pieces. Cooperation and giving assistance to the commencement of illegal and anti-Nazi activities of local organizations. The Zionist Youth Resistance Movement in Hungary is an unique phenomenon in Europa, ruled by the Germans during the Second World War. All of the Zionist youth movements gathered and cooperated together in harmony and in solidarity for save Jews as much as possible, and they did it successfully.
It's incredible. David, it's incredible. So David, can you just tell us a little bit about where you grew up in your family, what you remember growing up a little bit?
My family, parents and my sister were sent to Auschwitz from the countryside. I tried to rescue my sister, but I didn't succeed. After the war, my mother and my sister came back. My father killed him in Auschwitz. My sister came to Israel, Altam, to take Aliyah, and in the beginning of '49, the communist regime banned the activity of the Zionist movement. I was nominated to the leader of the Bricha, the illegal Bricha in communist rule from Hungary to help the Zionist Youth Movement members, and everybody wanted to go to Israel. And also I come with the last Zionist people, and I settled in Israel. I learned profession in Technion, and I had a office of planning and executing a civil project, project all around Israel. I am
married.
Married David Gur, and she is today a professor of psychology, and we have 3 daughters, 10
Grandchildren?
Grandchildren, and 8 great-grandchildren in the meantime. All of our family is living in Israel. Thank you.
And David, if I could just ask, when the Germans invaded Hungary, I think you went to Budapest as you were young, you were just a teenager, but you went to Budapest.
את זה אני לא יכול לספר לך, וחבל שזה ילך לאיבוד. אני כותב את זה גם פה ב-CV שלי, שאני הוזמנתי להנהגה ואמרו שאני צריך להצטרף לבית המלאכה של הפעולה המחתרתית כדי לספק תעודות מצילות חיים לפעולות ההצלה של המחתרת. ואני במשך הזמן הפכתי להיות האחראי על כל הפעילות של בית המלאכה, והבית המלאכה זה סיפק את הדרישות ואת הצרכים לא רק של התנועה הציונית ולא רק של היהודים, אלא ידענו להושיט עזרה לאותם אנשים שגויים מקומיים
It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce David Gur, the author of Brothers for Resistance and Rescue, the Underground Zionist Youth Movement in Hungary during World War II. And David, you gave a talk at Yad Vashem in 2015, and this is a summary of the talk that you gave. So thank you so much, David.
In the dark days of 1944, when tragic events befell Hungary and Jewry, the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement's rescue operations were a bright ray of light. In March 1944, during the first week of the Germans' entrance to Hungary, I was sought by the leadership of the movement. I was told, "You are joining the team at the workshop for providing documents." It was a pivotal event for me. All at once, the new position placed me at the center of the underground resistance activities. I was to be part of a huge rescue operation of the person in charge of the central workshop of the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement. At the end of 43 and early 44, it was clear to the leadership of the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement in Hungary that the Germans had instituted the systemic annihilation of the European Jewry. When the Germans entered Hungary on March 1944, the leadership realized that Hungary's Jews were the remnants of European Jewry. It was the leadership's duty and responsibility to do everything it could, the possible as well as the impossible, to rescue and foil the Germans and their collaborators' heinous scheme to annihilate Hungarian Jewry, to rescue. The reasons that decided in favor of rescue unequivocally were absence of favorable topographic conditions. Most of Hungary's territory is a flat terrain, wooded sparsely and without swamps. Lack of time. With the entry of the Germans, the anti-Jews decrees followed one after another with dizzying speed. Within a very short time, the Jews of the provinces were forced into ghettos, and a few weeks later they were deported to Auschwitz. There was no time to get organized. A shortage of people able to bear arms. Most of Jewish men aged 21 and 42 had been conscripted for forced labor by the Hungarian army, and from 42 the majority of them had been sent to Russian front. Those aged for 18 to 48 who had not been conscripted were called into service after the entry of the Germans. It was impossible to organize an armed resistance with women and children alone. The lack of empathy by the local population, there was an atmosphere of hostility and alienation among the citizens of Hungary, and it was unrealistic to expect any assistance whatsoever from the local non-Jewish population. Not water or food, no hiding shelters or intelligence, not weapons. On revolts, when there is the other option. Then we have to. One revolts when there is no other option, when you don't want to die and won't allow others to kill you, when you can ensure life. That is an awesome responsibility, declared Rafi Ben Shalom. The Hungarian authorities were taken by surprise by the occupation of Hungary, as were the Jewish institutions. However, The Zionist youth movement was not. With the eve of the occupation and on the next day, while other organizations had not realized the dramatic significance of the current situation, they reacted. Members over 17 years old were ordered to assume an Aryan identity and go underground. Armed thus with a new identity, anti-Jewish laws would not apply to them and they would be free to act and rescue others. With that strategic decision, the underground activities began. Along with the Aryanization, the youth movement took on two rescue operations: dispatching emissaries to the Jewish communities in the provincial towns and to forced labor camps, organizing the smuggling of Jewish youth across the Roman border, from where they would continue to Palestine. From the first day of the German entry, the Jewish communities in the provincial towns were isolated, cut off from the central Jewish institutions in Budapest and from the rest of the world. Jews were prohibited from using public transport, telephones were disconnected, and radios were turned over to the authorities. On their own initiative, the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement sent emissaries to the cut-off provincial towns to warn them to the expected anti-Jewish measures, the ghettoization, imminent deportations, and what was to follow. The emissaries brought documents, money, and instructions for the Jewish youth on how to escape Budapest. The emissaries were equipped with the proper documents for their dangerous missions. Ephra Agmon wore a uniform of a railway officer. Asher Arani, the uniform of Levante, the state paramilitary youth organization, and Ephra Nadav traveled dressed as a student from Budapest. Equipped with a student identity card of the university. Others reached their destination with the order papers for a labor camp or as ordinary citizens. The hunters of army deserters and Jewish in disguise did not suspect the innocent appearance of Tzipi Nadav. Sometimes the emissaries managed to make contact with comrades of local Jews. At other times there was a total lack of trust by community leaders. Documentation exists attesting that in the course of 44, some 200 emissaries were dispatched to 300 communities and forced labor camps. The Zionist Youth Resistance Movement in Hungary was the only initiator that carried out those dangerous missions to rescue others. Aliyah was the only way to escape concentration camps, death camps, and certain deaths, crossing the Romanian border and continuing on the way to the land of Israel. Thus began the organized border smuggling of Jewish youth, known as Tiul, the Hebrew codename used by professional smugglers as well, into Romania via the border towns of Szeged, Kolozsvár, Békéscsaba, Nagyvárad. Among those who had participated in that dangerous activity, we shall name Hannah Gans, Asher Arani, Moshe Alpan, Yaakov Dioshi, Yehuda Levi, and Menachem Tzvi Kadari. Smuggling people across the border was a dangerous and complex operation. It began with grouping them in Budapest and preparing each member individually, along with memorizing their new names. They had to be provided with suitable clothing and proper documents, and each had to be provided with both Hungarian and Romanian currency. The candidates were briefed on how to behave on the long train journey, where they would meet and how they would recognize the smuggler, what they had to do in a strange city at night, how they would send the message that the border had been crossed successfully, and what they must do on the Romanian side. First, they had to pass through the ring of security forces, the army, the police, the undercover agents who tried to identify and capture Jewish in disguise, enter the railway station in Budapest and purchase train tickets. Then during the long train journey, they had to avoid attracting attention and provide their documents nonchalantly to the suspicious inspectors. They had to spend the night in a strange city, in the dark, and in the company of the smuggler. They had to cross the border at night on foot and then send back the agreed signal. The crossing was accomplished. They had to reach the first big city on the Romanian side, either Arad or Torda, where the local Jews who spoke Hungarian helped the escapees who did not speak Romanian to reach Bucharest and onward from there. Some were captured in those dangerous operations on the train journey, in the border towns, or sometimes on the Romanian side as well. The organized smuggling operation ended on August 23, 44. Romania switched sides and joined to the USSR against Germany. The border between Romania and Hungary became a battlefield. Apart from the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement, no other organization took responsibility for the rescue operation. According to the records of the Jewish communities in Arad and Torda between April and August of 44, 15,000 Jewish youths crossed the border illegally. This smuggling operation that rescued Jews from certain deaths was unprecedented in its scope in German-occupied Europe during World War II. On October 15, 44, following the putsch of the fascist Aerocross party, the brutal persecution of the Jews of Budapest began. Every day, Jews of different age of between April and August of 44, 15,000 Jewish youths crossed the border illegally. This smuggling operation that rescued Jews from certain death was unprecedented in the scope in German-occupied Europe during World War II. On October 1544, following the putsch by the fascist Ecos Party, the brutal persecution of the Jews of Budapest began. Every day, Jews of different age groups, men and women, were ordered to report for forced labor. In the wake of various deployment orders, the adult Jewish population of Budapest disappeared and many children were left on their own. Then a spontaneous campaign began. Neighbors and older siblings brought the children who remained without their parents to the office of the International Red Cross at 4 Merlek Street. The Zionist Youth Resistance Movement reacted at once. Within a short time, they established 55 children's homes under the protection of the International Red Cross in the framework of Department A, headed by Otto Komoy, president of the now illegal Zionist Federation. They rented suitable buildings and provided them with basic equipment: beds, mattresses, blankets, cooking utensils, and toys. They organized a staff of educators from among the movement's membership, appointed administrative and economic staff, placed guards, and put up a sign on the building's facade. This building is under the protection of the International Red Cross. The Zionist Youth Resistance Movement ensured a regular supply of food to the children's homes, as well as a supply of heating material for the cold winter months. Every evening, the director of the economic section of Department A, the person in charge of the transformation, and Ephra Agmon, who represented the clandestine Zionist Youth Resistance Movement, would discuss the needs. The three decided to which children's home, protected house, or the central ghetto in 7 districts supplies would be sent to the following day with supplies from these storehouses and by which means of transport. The role of the covert resistant movement was to escort the cars, protect the food supplies from armed aerocross squads or from arbitrary confiscation by the army unit, and to deliver the supplies safely to the destination. That was the supreme mission of the movement. During the reign of terror of the Aerocross Party and Siege of Budapest, the Underground Zionist Youth Resistance Movement established, operated, and saved 55 children homes in which 6,000 souls survived. This is a unique and inconceivable story of World War II. From 1949, the Swiss Embassy of Hungary had represented both Great Britain and Palestine efforts as part of the British Empire, including arrangements for the Aliyah to the land of Israel. 3 weeks after the successful Allied landings in Normandy on June 6, 1944, a forum of Hungarian government ministers approved the Swiss Embassy's memorandum. The 7,800 immigration certificates issued by the Palestine authorities and available at the Budapest office could be implemented. On July 24th, an office was opened at the Glass House on 29 Vada Street with the sign Immigration Section of the Office for Foreign Interest Representation of the Swiss Legation. It processed a migration application. It processed immigration applications and organized emigration to the land of Israel. Until the administrative immigration process was finalized, the applicants received confirmation to the effect that they were registered in a collective passport, and until their departure from Hungary, they were considered Swiss citizens under the protection of the Swiss legation. This document was known as the Schutzpass, letter of protection. The Zionist Youth Resistance Movement demanded representation at the Glass House, a building that held exterritorial status. In August, an office headed by Rafi Ben Shalom began operating. On the door was a sign reading, Hechalut Section. In that office, the movement distributed documents. Missions were assigned to the underground members. Candidates for crossing the border were prepared. Coded messages and successful border crossings were received, and the emissaries were directed to the forced labor camps. At that Glass House, news about the capture of movement members and their imprisonment was received, and plans for the release were made. At that Hechalut office, discussions of the cooperation and negotiations with representatives of anti-German and anti-fascist groups were held without the knowledge of the Glass House administration. The leadership of the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement also met it in the safety of the Glass House, and this replaced the random and dangerous meetings held in cafes and parks. During the last 2 weeks of October, after the putsch of the Arab Cross Party, the doors of the Glass House were opened under the initiative of Alexander Grossman. Escapees from forced labor camps, families of Zionist activists, members of the youth movement, and others moved in. In November, a Swiss embassy emblem was affixed although to 17 Weckerle Street. In December, the wall separating the attached building on 31 Vada Street was torn down, and abandoned building of the Hungarian Football Association was filled with about 11 recruits of the youth movement under the command of Dr. Shimshon Natan. The Zionist Youth Movement organized the activities of daily life in the three buildings, and of the many people involved we shall remember Moshe Biderman, Simcha Humboldt, and Benjamin Feigenbaum. In those three buildings of the Glass House, more than 4,000 Jews found refuge and were liberated by the Red Army on January 1845. The building that had been chosen to serve as the Office of Immigration, Aliyah, had become a significant shelter for persecuted Jews, all thanks to the Underground Zionist Youth Resistance Movement. In November of 44, Jewish men aged 1650 and women aged 1640 were ordered to report for forced labor on defenses and fortifications around Budapest. 70 forced labor units of Jews were removed by the Hungarian army to Germany. The horrific death marches of women, children, and the aged were off on November 60s, while on November 2nd and 3rd, the thunder of Russian Katyusha rockets could already be heard about 20 kilometers away from Budapest. The mad race for life began. The Zionist youth of the Glass House initiated an immense, ambitious rescue operation, provide a schutzpass for every person to gain time and to postpone the end. They began to printing the schutzpasses. Underground Zionist Youth Resistance Movement members distributed them from the Glass House, and the officers of International Red Cross at 4 Mirlak Street and 52 Baroche Street on Joseph Avenue, and on the Swiss Consulate on 24 Percelmore, that was established precisely for this purpose. Mounted police in front of the building in Szabadságtér protected the crowds who were storming the consulate until Peretz Reves and Avri Feigenbaum, who had presented themselves as the consulate officers, managed to sign the schutzpasses. With the help of these documents, entire units of forced laborers were brought back from the German border. One of those who conceived and ran this was a successful rescue operation was Alexander Grossman. In May-June 44, the Magyar Front, an anti-German alliance, was formed. Several anti-government parties participated, along with a member of individuals. Kisgazdapárt, Kettős Keresztszövetség, Szociáldemokrata Párt, Békepárt, Nemzeti Parasztpárt, Deménycsoport, Endre Bajcsy-Zsilinszky. When the participants had decided on concrete measures, item S, to operate underground, they needed appropriate documents. In the absence of suitable apparatus, all the groups of the anti-German alliance approached the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement with an identical request to provide the documents that would enable them to change their identities and operate underground. All the requests were fulfilled. The significant documents provided for the anti-German alliance were police residential reports, military documents, and military factory worker documents. Some of the connections made through the cooperation in the struggle against the regime were Paul Demain and his close circle, and labor leaders Ivan Kadar, Laszlo Solyom, and Sándor Galambos Futó. The Zionist Youth Resistance Movement also maintained contact with a priest, the Protestant Albert Beretsky, with Paul Fabry of the liberal circles, with van der Waals, an allied officer who had escaped from German captivity, with Vilmos Tarsai, with the priest Pater Balog, and with others. The anti-German circles provided apartments, hiding places, and jobs for the members of the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement. The Underground Zionist Youth Resistance Movement, a small and persecuted Jewish underground, cooperated and provided commendable assistance to the anti-German organizations. The most effective weapon of the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement was the document, the appropriate document, and the workshop for providing documents was the underground's very core. An efficient team working undercover produced the various daily ammunition required by the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement and the anti-German resistance groups. At the request of Hashomer Hatzair Youth Movement, David Gur joined the workshop team in March 44. Within a short time, he was in charge of the workshop's operation, converting production from the elite tailoring and adapting it to the demands of the time, that of mass production, obtaining document forms, preparing stamps, and solving conspiratorial logistical problems. The illegal workshop served the underground's rescue resistance effort faithfully. The concierge of the apartment houses demanded a stamped police resistance report. For the members of the resistance who lived dependent on proper documents, obtaining a ration card was also an existential issue. The people who crossed the border into Romania, the emissaries sent on rescue mission to the provincial town, the escort of the food consignments to the children's houses, inmates in the forced labor camps who were planning to escape, all needed appropriate documents. In addition, documents were needed to rescue Jews from the mass gatherings prior to and from the death march itself. As the front moved closer to Budapest, only a military factory worker document and army discharge certificate could save men of recruitment age from deportation to Germany or from facing a firing squad. Due to safety and conspiratorial reasons, the workshop changed its location and cover. It moved from the studio at 12 Bethlehem Street into a private department, Dara Street. After it was hit by an Allied air raid, it moved from its location at 52 Kerepesi Road to the basement of 93 Rose Street, where it operated in relative safety, acting as an office representing a soy factory located at Chapel Island. Following the putsch of the Aerocross Party, the workshop tried its luck in the Maurice Zygmunt bookshop in Barrow Street, and later again in the same street in the library building of the fascist students' union, Csaba Bajtár Egyesület, that belonged to the Semmelweis University. The daily appearance and presence of several youths of university age blended with the local atmosphere. In early December, our liaison with the outside world did not appear at the appointed time or later. As dictated by the Underground's unwritten rules, the workshop related at once. On December 21, 44, at his new working location at a branch office of the city engineer at 13 Elizabeth Street, 3 members of the workshop team, along with all the equipment, were captured. The 3, David Gur, Mickey Langer and André Fabri, were brutally interrogated at the Aerocross officers in the 6th district. Mickey Langer died as a result of the extreme torture. The remaining 2 were taken to the Central Military Prison on Margit Avenue, where their interrogated and torture continued. In a daring operation on December 25th, the leadership of the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement fled them along with 118 imprisoned members of the underground. In German-occupied Europe of World War II, the Central Workshop for Documents operated by the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement in Hungary holds a significant and prominent status, both in terms of the sheer quantity and range of the documents it produced and the rescued and resistance movement achievements that were attained due to those documents. The impressive initiatives and rescue resistance operations of the organized Zionist youth in Hungary in 1944 are unique. Smuggling some 15,000 young people into Romania on their way to the land of Israel, thereby saving them from Auschwitz and certain death. Dispatching 200 emissaries in various Jewish communities and forced labor camps to warn and rescue, providing Schutzpasses for tens of thousands of Jews, setting up and running 55 children's homes and saving 6,000 souls, unparalleled ever. The leadership of the Zionist Youth Movement in Hungary read the socio-political map correctly during an extreme historical crisis and reacted immediately and practically, organizing rescue missions and assuming responsibility for life and death. In its wisdom, the leadership knew to delegate responsibility and activated the members of the underground in expanding circles. The members of the Underground Zionist Youth Resistance risked their lives willingly to save their comrades and rescue tens of thousands of Jews unknown to them, all in the spirit of Jewish and human solidarity. The decisions of the leadership of the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement on rescue operations were autonomous. No one issued them orders, not locally or from abroad. The activists of the resistance had ample opportunities to escape. They did not do. They remained at the post, risking their lives, time, and again to save others. The actions of the Jewish resistance bore socio-political significance for the wider Jewish public. Towards the end of the Szálasi regime, the Jewish population of Budapest viewed the resistance membership and leadership as an alternative Jewish leadership. The German Nazis and Hungarian fascists fully intended to annihilate and not leave a trace of Hungarian Jewry. The Zionist Youth Movement dared and opposed those schemes and rescued more than 30,000 souls successfully. The youth movement emerged from the war ruins battered. However, they realized that they had accomplished the impossible with bravery and sacrifice. The Zionist Youth Resistance Movement's unique, extensive rescue enterprise, with its impressive achievement during the year 44, wrote some glorious pages in the history of Hungarian Jewry. Indeed, there are lessons and inspiration for the future generations.
David, I really want to thank you. And David, I must just mention that there really are no words. There are no words to say Toda Rabba Lecha, Ein Milim. There are no words. What you have just read to us, and what you not only read, what you did, I think what stands out is that you saved so many fellow Jews and you helped many non-Jews, and you could have saved yourself. You could have also gone on to Romania and then to Eretz Israel, but you stayed behind to save others. And I think that is something that is such an example we are in awe, because it is amazing.
לא מעריכים את ההצלה מאחר שמעורבים בזה שווינדלראי, תעודות מזויפות. אני לא משתמש כבר במילה, אני אומר תעודות מתאימות, תעודות נדרשות, תעודות נחוצות.
נכון.
אני אומר, ואז הם קצת לא חושבים על שווינדלראי. יהודי, שווינדלר, לירוק.
So true.
זו היה נשק.
You're very modest. But David, I just want to mention, because it's so important, and I'm just going to quickly, I want to summarize with you what the achievements, which is remarkable, it's unbelievable, it is something, a phenomenon that I think world jury and the world should know, that the Zionist Youth Movement in Hungary, you acted, and I just want to show the book that you've done, but that what you did, which is so unique, is that the youth movements were together, united. You worked together, and I think that is such an example as well. But the activities of the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement in 1944, you dispatched over 200 emissaries, you and the youth movements, to 300 various communities and forced labor camps to warn and to rescue. You warned the people, which is, you don't hear about that, but you actually did. You had the insight, your organization and the youth movements, to warn the people. You smuggled, you and the organizations, you smuggled 15,000 young people into Romania on the way to the land of Israel. And you saved them from Auschwitz and certain death. Your organization, and you in particular, were instrumental in setting up and running 55 children homes and saving over 6,000 children and their caretakers. Providing Swiss protection letters, the Schutzpass, for tens of thousands of Jews, and approximately 100,000 pieces. It's incredible in such a short span of time, under such difficult conditions. You cooperated in giving assistance with illegal anti-Nazi activities to the local organizations and to the non-Jews as well. They also asked for your help, and you helped them. And really, the Zionist Youth Resistance Movement in Hungary is a unique phenomenon. It really is. In Europe, which was ruled by the Germans during World War II, all the Zionist youth movements gathered and cooperated together in harmony and in solidarity to save Jews as much as possible, and they did it successfully. And that is something which I think leaves an indelible impression, an indelible mark in Jewish history that should be known by everybody, because it is something absolutely remarkable, and you are such an example we should all strive to emulate. But I just want to mention as well, David, that you have been honored. You were awarded the Medal of Valor in 1998. That was in Hungary.
Yes.
And then you were...
All in Hungary.
And then you were given other recognitions in Hungary. And I think what's also wonderful here is that B'nai B'rith has recognized you and the organization for helping to save other Jews, which is a very important part of Holocaust education and of our history as well, that there were many Jews that helped other Jews, and you in particular, and the Zionist youth movements especially. And what's, I think, wonderful is that in 2007, in the Holocaust Martyrs and Hero Remembrance Day, you were the torch lighter at Yad Vashem on behalf of Zionist youth resistance movements in Hungary. That must have been a very emotional when you lit the torch at Yad Vashem on Yom HaShoah.
Okay.
Well, David, I am so grateful to you, and there are no words to tell you how I appreciate and how I am in awe of what you did and what you continue to do. And you should just have only mazal bracha, and may this book be in all different organization homes, and we should all read it and learn from it, because you really are an example for all of us. Toda rabba im kol halev. Thank you so much. David, I am so incredibly grateful to you. And thank you so much, David.
אז את זה אתה לוקח ואתה מנסה לעשות